Hello and welcome. This is an iPod mini. As you can see, it's pretty beat up, which is the case for a lot of these old iPod minis. It's actually getting somewhat difficult to come across ones that are in good condition these days. There's some stores online that are selling replacement housings, although most of them are just selling good condition used housings. And at this point in time, I'm pretty sure there isn't anybody selling brand new replacement housings for the iPod minis. It may be because these things look semi-difficult to manufacture, although I'm not sure as I'm no expert on that. Although, I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to have a go at making a replacement housing on my new 3D printer I got recently. I first went out and had a look to see if anybody else had made one already. If you're unfamiliar with 3D printers, there's a couple of websites where people upload their designs, and since 3D printing's been around for a little while now, there are heaps of different designs to choose from. The main site that comes to mind is Thingiverse. I didn't find any iPod mini housings that I was satisfied with, although I did find a big range of other iPod parts that people have designed, including this very nice iPod Classic front plate, which will fit on the Classic 5th, 6th and 7th gens, and a home button to go along with it, so maybe I'll put a link for those in the description. So at this stage I decided I was going to design my own. In order to make parts that can be printed on a 3D printer, we'll need to make a 3D model using some CAD software. A lot of these programs are pretty expensive and quite complicated to use. The one I ended up going with was FreeCAD, which as the name implies is free. Although it is buggy and has a bit of a learning curve, you can definitely design some pretty cool things using it. In order to design the iPod mini housing, I first used my calipers to take measurements of literally everything and jotted them down on a piece of paper. Then, in FreeCAD, I entered all the measurements exactly, so the model would look as close as I could get to a one-to-one replica. There's lots of little things you wouldn't think about that you have to include. For instance, these cutouts for the metal shield at the bottom, the rails for the buttons to slide into, the cutout for the battery wires, and even this little size difference between where the top and bottom plastic sits and the inside of the housing. After I was finished making it, I saved the design as an STL file, which is the type of file we'll need in order to print things out on a 3D printer. To print it out, we'll need to open the 3D printer software. This is also referred to as a slicer, as it'll take the 3D model and slice it up into a bunch of different layers, and will determine the route that the 3D printer uses to print it. The one I use is called Bamboo Studio and is the recommended software for my 3D printer. After we open it, we got to import our STL file that we just made and rotate it into the correct position if it isn't already. Before we print it out, there's a few settings we could adjust. Making the layer height smaller will make the lines less visible on the print. This can make it look cleaner, I think, although it'll make the print take significantly longer. Another setting we can play with is the seam position. This is the point where each layer ends and moves on to the next one. If we don't adjust it, we'll get these lines growing through our model and can make it look a bit ugly. The settings I think look the best is either to put it at the back like this, or have them set randomly, which will make the surface look less clean but won't have any big lines going through it. Next we can click Slice Plate and the software will come up with the route that the printer will take to make the model. And then we can click Print Plate and print to actually print it out. As you can see, it gives us an estimated time and an estimated amount of filament that'll be used. Now we just wait. And here we have it. As you can see, this is how the model came out. I made a few of these actually using a bunch of different settings, although this is the one I ended up using, the one with the scattered layer lines. There are a couple of things to note about how it came out. Firstly, this top part here sticks out a little bit at the point in the model where the top plastic goes. I think this is due to that small lip here. Another thing to note is that I had to use a file to shave down some of the plastic around where the click wheel slots in as the filament begins to droop down towards the top of the circle. This may be fixable if I use supports, but I would probably have to shave them down as well if I did that, so there's probably no point in adding them. Although it was stronger than what I was expecting it to be, probably due to these curves on the inside which I think helped to reinforce it. Now to just get it installed. If you've never taken apart an iPod mini before, all you gotta do is pop off the top and bottom plastics, pop off the bottom shield, undo the two screws at the top, unclip the buttons, then slide the internals up from the bottom of the housing. This is definitely one of the easier iPods to open up and work on. Now we'll need to take the old plastic screen cover out of the old housing, which can be kind of difficult to do without cracking. I used some heat in my tweezers to get it off, but no alcohol in this case as that seems to make it crack a little bit easier. Then we can clean off the old adhesive and apply some new stuff. We can then just install it into our new 3D printed housing, which fit perfectly. Now we can use that file to shave around where the buttons will sit. Then we can take the buttons out of the old iPod mini housing by sliding them out the bottom like this. And then we can slide them into our new one. They fit in there pretty well, although I think I could have made the rails they sit on a bit thicker as they can be pushed through when nothing else is installed. Before we reinstall the logic board, now's a good time to do some upgrades. I switched out the original hard drive with an iFlash CF adapter and a 64GB micro SD card, as well as replaced the battery with a brand new one. If you want to see my full iPod mini upgrade tutorial, I'll have a link in the description. I then slotted it back in and put some screws to hold it in place. The screws I used were a little smaller than the originals as the holes I'd put weren't big enough. There's a couple of adjustments I still need to make to get this perfect. We can then reinstall our bottom bracket as well as our top and bottom plastics, and there we have it, a 3D printed iPod mini. Once all the parts are installed, it seemed to be pretty sturdy and now it's ready to be used. It feels much lighter than it did originally, and of course with this being 3D printed we could obviously make it whatever colour we wanted as well. I only have black and green filament on hand at the moment, although I'll probably try a bunch of different colours in the future. The frame being made from plastic would also make this ideal if you were to do a Bluetooth mod on one of these as well, as the signal can now pass through the housing much easier. Although with it being made from plastic and the original being made from aluminium, I thought it could be a bit more durable if I made some of the parts a bit thicker. The parts that go above the screen and below the charging port do flex a little bit if you bend them. So I went back into FreeCAD and quickly added some extra thickness to the outside by adding a pad to each of the outer surfaces, which was a quick way of doing it. Although it did leave these gaps around the curves at the sides. I decided to leave those in for now though, as it kind of looked alright and conveniently hid the seam position. I printed that one out too and it was a lot more sturdy, although it was only an extra 1.4mm thicker in total. It also didn't have that change in thickness towards the top like the other one did, which made it kind of look like it had a lid. The extra thickness did make it significantly more sturdy, although I wasn't 100% happy with the look of it, so I just decided to redesign another one from scratch with some extra thickness added to the walls. And here's that one next to our original design. It's only an extra 1.2mm thicker in total, although when printed out in plastic it does make it feel significantly stronger. I then decided to print out another one of those in black and replace it with the first one I printed. The process of designing parts like this for the 3D printer really just involves a lot of test fitting, just printing out the parts and seeing what fits and what doesn't, then going back and making adjustments till you get it perfect. I probably made nearly 20 prints in total, just adjusting things like the screen and button cutouts by a millimeter or two until I got it to the point where I was satisfied. Although I am pretty happy with the way this final one's come out. I've uploaded all these designs to my Thingiverse account so you can print them out and install them on your iPod too. In the future I'll make a replacement top and bottom plastic piece as well. Or if you don't have a 3D printer, I'll also print out a bunch of these and list them for sale on my website if you're interested in getting one. I'll probably do a part 2 where I add Bluetooth and USB-C, so subscribe and stay tuned for that one. If you have an old iPod you want to get fixed, check out my website. You can book a mail-in repair through there or buy parts and have a go at it yourself. I'm also selling these Bluetooth upgrade kits for the iPod Classic 5th, 6th and 7th gens as well. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.